on the move. Little dance step was good. Couple of bounces. Can take it himself and launch long. Inspirational.
Time ticking away. Stop it. For Silvani. What about that?
Mackay. Two in a minute. And they are dancing now, the Blues.
Almost Mackay. Walsh, here he is. Straightens up and has delivered. Is there nothing this young man can't do?
Hello and welcome to the Navy Blue Corner. I'm Ian. I'm joined as always by my good mate Lockie, and welcome to the first episode of the 2022 season. New intro, new season, and we are incredibly excited just to get stuck in. Lockie, I need to ask you to start this. I want a raw reaction from you. How are you feeling about everything Carlton going into the 2022 season? Are you excited, optimistic, nervous? I want to get your raw reaction on this.
As is the branding of our podcast and who we strive to be, I'm very optimistic going into the season. We've had a few little curveballs thrown at us over the last few weeks as we prepare for the preseason to get properly underway with some matches. But I remain really optimistic. I think we're going to get into what our expectations are and what we're hoping for. And I'm confident that we're going to be able to move forward and make progress this year. So that's where I'm sitting. What about you?
I'm in a weird spot. I am weirdly the calmest I think I have ever been heading into a season, which is also making me incredibly nervous. I'm very optimistic like you. We tend to be pretty positive on this podcast, but I'm not going, oh, this is a make or break year where everything has to go right. That I think maybe I would have been if David Teague was still the coach and we'd had a bit more continuity. We've had the review. We've got a new whole coaching group, not just the head coach. So a lot's changed, and maybe that's dulled the expectations a little bit for me, which we'll definitely go into. Everything seems to be going well, obviously, apart from the Sam Walsh injury, which we will touch on, and obviously the Jones stuff that we've talked about quite a lot to finish the season last year. But I'm just keen to see what happens, I think. So I'm very calm, which is so odd for me headed into a season. I don't think I'm as high as I was sort of the last few seasons going, we're going to win. We're going to win everything. I've sort of dulled it down a little bit. So I think with that, let's head into the expectations. What do you want out of this season? Is it finals? Is that just the benchmark? Like how are you feeling about it all?
Yeah, we've spoken about this before with the different ways you can set expectations. And I think it's top 8 or not. Sometimes it's about the win-loss record. Sometimes it's more intangible, which I know you kind of like to talk about, and it's not necessarily just about whether it's a W or an L. I think for me, it's non-negotiable that we get more wins than last year. 8 and 14 is what we ended up with. It felt like we had more to me. Like, I feel like that's kind of surprising looking back and being like, it was only 8 wins. It felt like more. So where I'm kind of sitting is if we can get up to 10 or 11 wins, that's fantastic. Maybe that'll get us into finals. Maybe it won't. But I think I'm trying to temper my expectations to more of a win-loss basis rather than making the 8 or not, because it's too hard to know where you're going to slide in at the end of the season. But yeah, my expectations change day to day. So that's just where I am as of the 20th.
Oh, it's a hard one. I think everyone's just talking about finals. And for me, that's the perfect benchmark of, like, if you want to talk about, pass marks and things like that, that probably is it. I think we did have a question from Jacqueline Hunt. She said, thoughts on what you consider the pass mark for the upcoming season. And I think like last year, finals probably is that. But as far as expectations and I guess looking at it holistically, I'm not just banking on finals, which I think Carlton supporters might be yelling, listening to this going, we need to make finals. Like, we shouldn't have the expectation of anything lower. But I think I'm trying to look at it from other points of view, and my expectations, maybe like you, I'm not necessarily just going, it has to be this. I'm looking for things I can see. And so I've tried to break it into a few different points. And what that is like, regardless of finals or not, I want to be at least, competing for that finals position, sort of heading into those last few games of this season, where I think the last few years, it's been maybe like 5 rounds to go. We've been thereabouts, and then we lose to a Gold Coast or a North, and everything's just gone to shreds. And we can't be having that. We need to be competing there till the very end. I want a bit more consistency. None of these 5-goal swings where we're just not competitive for a large stretch of a match and the match is gone. Like, we can't be doing that anymore. And I think that's probably leads on to the next one where I'm going, I don't want to see the same mistakes week in, week out without anything seemingly changing. Like, I want to see us evolving and growing. I want to see a game plan that I seem to understand and I can believe in and go, this is going to take us forward for the next 5-10 years. You know, we can't be making the same mistakes week in, week out where, we're turning the ball over here or whatever it is, the 5-goal swings. And then next week, I see us lose the exact same way. And then next week, lose the exact same way. I want to be seeing us building and building and building as the season is going, because it's not just about finals this year. It's about consistent finals over the next, 10 years and winning grand finals. And you need a platform for that. And that's what I'm trying to get, I think, this year, because it is a fresh coaching group. It's Vossi who has not coached this group before. You kind of, I don't want to like dull the expectation and say we've got to give him a bit of leeway, but I do think that there needs to be some. And so I do want finals, but I'm looking for those sort of key points more than I am anything else, because I do believe that will translate with wins and hopefully finals.
I think it's such an interesting situation we're in. I can't remember a time where the expectations amongst fans and amongst the AFL community have been broader for us.
Yeah.
Where it seems like now the fact that we didn't make finals last year, some people are going like it is the biggest non-negotiable ever that we now make the 8. That last year was just a blip and now we have to make it. Whereas others have the belief that, like, we may have gone back a step with a new coach and with Walsh missing the first little bit of the season. And so the expectations are we may not even be as good as we were last year. So it's an interesting spectrum that we have. And, there's so many different ways that you can take it because, the new coach bump is something that people love to talk about. And if you think that it was all Teague's problem, and that our list is fantastic and these players, he just wasn't getting the best out of them, then you probably think that we are a top 8 team.
Yeah, and like success obviously isn't linear. It's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. All you have to do is look at Melbourne. It struggled for years, get into the finals. They then, I think they made a prelim and then all of a sudden dropped completely away.
Yeah.
Is Goodwin getting sacked and all of a sudden from out of the 8, they've won the flag. So it's so strange how these things can happen, which the more you kind of look at it, apart from really, I think Richmond, who even when they catapulted, they were nowhere and all of a sudden did it. It seems like that's a bit of a trend. So I want these foundations that I can see us going forward instead of it just being a win now and then let's not worry about next year. Because we always say like the finals or bust. And it's like, well, we're not going to sack Vossi at the end of the year. Like unless something incredible happens where we win no games for the season. Like that's the only case I can see that happening. We kind of need to build towards it. So like, obviously I want finals and I think we're capable of it. I thought we could have made finals last year. I think the list can be good enough if we put those structures into place. But again, there's other things that I need to see as well along with that can hopefully get us there. So probably the big thing I wanted to get out of this episode as well, I've gone back into creating spreadsheets and things like that to try to figure out a couple of things. And one of those is with the expectation of, can a new coach automatically get you finals? So I've gone through the data, I've gone over the numbers, and I've tried to look back basically from sort of 2013 2014 to now. And I've looked at every new coach that has come into the AFL from basically a team that did not make the 8. And did they take their team from outside the 8 into finals into their first year, which is what we're looking at with Voss, a team that did not make finals the year before. We get a new coach. Can you take a team straight to the finals? And basically the numbers aren't super, super promising. There has actually only been 5 coaches out of 20 that have taken over a team in the bottom 8 and taken them to finals in their first season. I'll take you through exactly who those are as well, so you get a bit of an idea of maybe the teams and where they were and if you can compare that to Carlton. So the first one is interesting. I'm not sure this counts because it's Essendon
Great.
in 2014. Basically, Mark Thompson takes over James Hird because of the drug saga. They finished 9th in that year, where we basically took over that 8th position. So did they or did they not actually finish in finals? And then they end up finishing 7th in his first year, which was a 1-year finals drought. For me, that doesn't even count. So you could say that's down to 4 out of 20.
Yep.
Next one, 2015 from Adelaide. You got Phil Walsh took over from Brenton Sanderson. They finished 10th a year prior, ended up finishing 7th in Walsh's first year with a 2-year finals drought. So they did pretty well, and obviously in his first season. But there is that little thing where it wasn't as if it was a massive drought when trying to compare it to Carlton, where it's a team that has struggled. Adelaide were there or thereabouts for a long stretch. Next one is probably a little bit more closer to us. 2015, it is the Western Bulldogs with Luke Beveridge, took over from Brendan McCartney. They finished 16th the year prior. He finished 6th in their first year of 4 years final drought. So Doggies definitely fell away quite a lot. They were a finals team before that. Struggled for a little bit. Bevo comes in, and I think there's parallels because you've got this coach that sort of almost took them, and then they bit the bullet, which a lot of people were saying, should you have sacked him? Maybe he was the guy to take you forward. Ends up working pretty well with Bevo, ends up taking him to a flag, and he's still there now. So I'm counting that one. Another that is really, really similar, to be honest, in some ways, is St. Kilda. So 2020, Brett Ratton takes over from Alan Richardson. They finished 14th the year prior, finished 6th in Ratton's first year. They did fall away last year, so who knows? But it was an 8-year finals drought. And St. Kilda were average, to say the least, for a lot of that stretch. They were one of the worst teams in the AFL, which I think we have been for quite a while now. So there is maybe a bit of a parallel you can take with that, where new coach comes in who has coached previously and takes that group forward where you need him to. And then the other one that I also kind of don't think counts, so maybe it's down to 3 out of 20, is Essendon in 2021. Ben Rutten takes over from John Worsfold. They finished 13th the year prior, 8th in his first season, which was a 1-year finals drought. And also the reason I don't think it counts is because Rutten was pretty much coaching that last season anyway when they didn't make finals. So can you really count it as his first year, which isn't great. So it's sort of like out of those 20 new coaches, it's really 3 for me. I guess, what do you make of hearing about the first year coaches taking those teams from the bottom 8 to finals?
Well, before you jumped into it, I was going to say that I was nervous to hear what stats you were going to come with. And I definitely think it does a good job of maybe tempering expectations of what a new coach can achieve. I mean, that's definitely lower than I would have thought. And I agree with those couple that you would exclude that don't seem to fit the mold. Really, really interesting. And I'm thinking, so Ratton was already at the club. Obviously, Ben Rutten was there. And Vossi's coming into a completely new situation with a whole new group around him. So, honestly, it would be pretty unprecedented if it did happen and we do manage to push in there.
Yeah, there is one that was right on the cusp, but it didn't count in what I was looking at, was basically Ken Hinkley the year before. So Port didn't make finals in 2012. They did in his first season in 2013, which was actually a 5-year drought for Port. And he's still there now. So maybe you can make the Vossi Hinkley comparison there as he obviously sort of coached under him. Maybe you can make that comparison. Unfortunately, didn't make the list because of the time period I was looking at, but it is a little bit of hope there for the fans. But yeah, out of 22 teams as well since 2014 who have gone from outside the 8 into finals. So I was trying to also look at that. Only 5 of them have been it. So there's been quite a few teams that actually made that jump that didn't have a new coach. They kept the same one. Again, it's only 5. So it's very interesting. And as I said, it's pretty much 3, which doesn't make it great. But one thing I did want to look at was the second-year coaches, because I think I've maybe tempered my expectations a little bit, and I'm almost trying to build for, I don't want to say it, but like build for the future as well. Look at that second season, see if guys that can come in, build those foundations in the first year can take you to finals the next year. And there are actually quite a few that have done it. And when you look at the names there's a few that kind of make you a bit happy when you look at it. So you got West Coast, where Adam Simpson comes in, and in his second year, they make finals. You've got GWS, you got Leon Cameron. He takes over from Kevin Sheedy, doesn't make finals the first year. Second year, makes finals. That comparison, I think, is kind of similar to where, I guess, in a way, we've been, where we did that full rebuild, stripped back the club completely like a GWS, starting from scratch with those draft picks, had the coach to almost get us there. Leon Cameron steps in, 2 years, gets them there, consistent finals, make a grand final as well. Another one is like John Walsh taking over from Hurdy. Again, there's all those different things going on with Essendon. Not too sure how much they count, but in his second year, it was finals. And then also Simon Goodwin, which maybe is another good comparison with Melbourne, where Paul Roos is trying to set them up with a young list. Goodwin comes in when you're trying to take that next step. Second year, he makes finals. So I feel like it's making me pretty excited looking at it going, look, if we don't make it this year, I can definitely see us making the jump next year. And all of those teams that seem to have made that jump in the second year were consistent finals teams, which does fill me with hope, and teams that seem to have, at least a couple of them, gone on to playing, if not winning, a grand final.
Wow. And we also know that if you set your expectations like this and we over deliver this year, you'll be delighted. So
beautiful.
I think it's a good way of looking at it. You know, look at the past. What are the precedents? I mean, the Melbourne one with Goodwin and how they kind of fluctuated in their ladder positions is often one that I talk about when I'm talking with mates about why this is our year. Because it's like, you know, it just feels like all the pieces feel to be there, but we weren't able to translate them into wins. And I'm optimistic that it can happen this year. But like as we said, if we can progress this year, get more wins on the board, not be able to make finals, just because that's, you know, it's extremely competitive to do that, and then it is the second year, then I think that's a good trajectory that we're on. Yeah,
and it's kind of crazy how, like, you look at Melbourne and everyone will, and I think so many Carlton supporters will try and draw that parallel where it was like, didn't make finals the year before, all of a sudden jumped and literally won the flag out of nowhere. No one in their right mind was saying Melbourne was, a lot of people didn't even have them making finals, let alone winning the grand final. So it is possible, and whether we're talking about a flag or just making finals, it is definitely possible with this list. And, you know, in other episodes, we'll get into predictions, best 22s, and we'll really talk about the list itself and where we see the team. There is so much talent across every line. And if we can get Vossi to teach these guys and get the right foundations, the right systems that we seem to have lacked in previous years, and everything that Vossi's been saying, it's got to fill you with optimism. It's definitely possible, and expectations and everything we're going to talk about this year, like finals is going to be the chatter, and it's definitely a realistic possibility, I think, ever than it has been before. But it's exciting and interesting to see it at where it's landed with other teams. So was there anything, I guess, you wanted to chat about the new coach coming in and what you sort of expect to see from Vossi at all?
There was one just quick comment I was just going to make, because I'm looking at the ladder from last year, just on the to wrap up the expectations talk. You and I often, we talk about, you know, when people are talking about players that should be pushing into the side, it's like, yeah, okay, if you think this player should be able to push into the side, tell us who comes out for them.
Yeah.
And you look at the ladder from last year, and there was the top 6 teams all had at least 15 wins. And I look at those names and I think that I don't see any of them missing the 8.
Yeah.
This year. So then who are the two, who can come out with all the teams pushing in? It's like, you could argue that we're better than the Giants. They're going to be better than the Giants this year. The Bombers, for sure, we're way better than the Bombers.
100%.
Yeah. West Coast have always been near it. St Kilda, you'd think they'll bounce back. Freo are building. Richmond are always around it. So it's, you know, when you look at it that way, it's easy to kind of temper your expectations. But look, we're still extremely optimistic, and I'm going to remain super positive that we can do it this year, even with all those factors.
Yeah, look, interesting point you make there. I had some notes on this as well, because I did the exact same thing. It was, okay, I think we can make finals, but and you go through the fixture and you try to pick out the wins and see how many there are. And then you're going, okay, well, who needs to miss out for us to get in? And again, we'll go into this in depth here because I've crunched some more numbers looking at all the teams that didn't make the 8 and going in. And basically since, 2013 to now, on average, 2.75 teams who finished outside the 8 make finals the next year. So it tends to be really, your 2 or 3 teams make the jump. Last year was interesting. We actually had 4 teams that finished outside the 8 in 2020 make it in 2021, being Melbourne, GWS, Essendon, and Sydney. Bit of an anomaly there. For every other year, it was 2 or 3. So I guess you take a look at all the teams that missed out. So normally at least 2 drop out. So let's go conservative with that. Looking at the teams to come in, the teams that we're sort of battling with, you have West Coast, St Kilda, Freo, and Richmond all finished above us last year. So they're really the teams we're competing with. I don't believe you'd throw a Hawthorn, Adelaide, Gold Coast, Collingwood, or North in that conversation. I think, all the teams that finished above us are the ones that we're really sort of competing with there. So I guess, who drops out? And I've been looking at it and I've gone, I think ladder-wise, Melbourne, Doggies, Brisbane, Port, Geelong are probably all locks for me. I find it hard to drop any of those teams outside the 8, which really just leaves 3 spots for the final 8, which is really between us, Sydney, GWS, Richmond, Essendon, West Coast, St Kilda, and Freo. It is tight. Like, we've got to be on. And I think we can. I think that if, obviously it's made harder with the Walsh injury, but if we want to be a good team, we've got to find ways to win. We've apparently been pretty lucky with our draw this year, the fixture. They've said it's an easy run. So they say.
Yep.
So hopefully we can figure it out and, beat the teams there. And you look at them and you go, okay, Richmond, beatable. Essendon, beatable. West Coast, they've got a lot of injuries at the moment. I think they're going to fall off personally. Beatable. St Kilda and Freo, beatable. The ones that I think we're really competing with it's Richmond, GWS, Sydney, and us really looking for those spots. So one's going to miss out. It's going to be tight, is all I'm going to say. And I even looked further at the positions of teams finishing outside the 8 to see if there's a correlation with a certain position on the ladder and whether where you finish can make you jump into the 8. And I thought it was really interesting. So from 2013, the most popular position of a team finishing the year prior and making finals is actually 10th. So 6 teams have made it, which gives you a 27% chance out of all the teams that didn't make it. The next best is 13th and 9th, both having 4 teams to do it. Now, I don't mean to alarm you here, but we actually finished 13th. So we've got an 18% chance out of all the teams that didn't make it in getting into the finals, which is the second best, tied with 9th position.
Now we're talking.
Does that give you a bit more optimism, knowing that teams that tend to finish in those positions, they make the jump, Lockie?
I love it. I mean, the optimism is growing by the second. I'm looking at this ladder. It's like, everyone loves to speak in generalities, but we love to get into the specifics here. Remember that we lost to the team that won 4 games last year. We lost to the team that won. We lost to the bottom 3 teams last year once.
Yep.
We lost to the Giants twice. We're so due to get their number at some stage. It's like when you look at just those parts, it's like, if we had just been consistent, like you said, we're striving for this year and been able to knock these teams over that we should be. Yeah. It's a whole different story. It's a whole different story. No, the optimism's growing. We're making it. Stuff it. I take it all back.
Well, wait till I bring this up for you. So going off your point, I love where you led this. It's not even scripted, which I love. Is basically the teams that we lost to as well last year. You mentioned we lost to North, we lost to Gold Coast, we lost to Collingwood.
Yep.
You beat those teams. Plus, we played West Coast reserves and lost to them. Make that a win. We had the Doggies on the ropes. A good team beats them in that position.
Yeah.
Again, GWS, you lost twice. If you make one of those a win, you then, even if you want to go further than that, one that sticks out is like Richmond round 1. They end up, having a bit of an average patch later. You beat them when you're in front and in a position to go on and win. You beat all those teams. That's finals.
Yeah.
So it's not that far a jump as far as what needs to happen for us to make finals. You beat all those teams that should be finishing in that bottom 8. Start to beat the teams around you. Get a couple of scalps. Beat a Geelong. Beat a Doggies that we seem to always play well against. And all of a sudden, you've made the top 8. So it's not that big a jump. So I understand why we're all getting super optimistic and going, this is our year. We're making finals. Because if things go right and Vossi and the coaching group are able to get the players that we think have this potential, that we've had years and years of it just not clicking, these 5-goal swings that come out of nowhere, if we can fix that, we're a couple of goals a better side defensively, and all of a sudden we're getting these wins. So I'm looking forward to it. Are there any other things that you think need to happen for us to be successful next season to make finals? Like, what needs to change for you? Is there anything personnel-wise that you're thinking this guy needs to come into the team? Is it a structural thing? Is it a mindset? Like, where are you trying to look at it and find those, I think, net positives? Where are you trying to get those things to change to get us finals next season?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. I guess when I look at it from the coaching and like Voss's perspective, as you kind of led into a bit earlier, we've heard the comments about like the game plan being unclear, people not knowing what we're actually going for out there. That seems like a really simple kind of fix that a new voice and somebody that's just kind of been around the joint longer, been around some other successful clubs will be able to bring. So I guess in past seasons where we're looking for these massive jumps from individual players, and you and I are calling for like, it's time for this guy to become, to take that big leap, them to cement themselves as a star. For me this year, it's a little bit more incremental kind of across the board, where if we can just connect the dots, you said the word connect, it does seem more like all the pieces are there. All our young guys are 1 year older, another preseason in quotes, a bit close to their prime. It just feels like it's a bit more of a connection across the board. Whereas in the past, I'm like, all right, Dow needs to become that 25 disposal a game player. I'm not as desperate for that now. It's more like if everybody just plays their role week in, week out, we know that is really good football, especially with the couple of additions that we have. We know that this is the best midfield when healthy that we're going to have been putting out in a long time. It just feels like all the dots are there to be connected. So I hope Voss is going to be able to just be the one that's going to make it a proper team. The one that, you know, they have each other's back and they get around each other, which are the things that we love. And it's just a unit.
I think the culture's there of guys loving everyone at the club and wanting to do well, but it's trying to focus that in the right areas to get guys to go above and beyond on the field for that. It's not just the off the field, oh, I love this guy who's, in the locker next to me. It's doing it on the field and knowing the levels that you can get to. And everything I hear from Vossi and the way he speaks about leaders and it's amazing. It's refreshing. It's something I don't feel any other coach we've had in a while has, and it obviously it's just words, but you can sense it and it feels like it makes sense for the players as well. Like you talk about everyone playing their role and, with injuries, with losing a Jones, with losing a Walsh for the first bit of the season as well. Yeah. It's more prevalent than ever that it needs to be system over personnel. And I think you nailed it on the head there, talking about like we need Paddy Dow to be the next Chris Judd. It's like we don't necessarily need that. We just need him to carve out his role in that team and play it and allow, the other guy to also get an extra 5 disposals and make those effective. Like those are the little things we're needing now. And I often talk about like the question mark players, the Zach Fishers spring to mind of those guys that haven't taken that next step, haven't carved out a role in this team. What's their best position? Is he a midfielder? Is he a half forward? I'm hoping that because we've got these coaches that are hopefully of a higher standard, that have got these fresh eyes looking at this group, that have maybe a bit more of a systems approach with an Ashley Hansen there rather than hoping that a Walshy and a Cripper can get you over the line with pure skill, that these guys have a defined role. I think you're seeing, like, unfortunately, I haven't been able to go to a lot of the open trainings, but I've been trying to look at everything I can on social media and even in the intra-club, trying to look at any little part of information I can take from the footage. And I'm seeing guys playing in specific positions. It's an O'Brien on Cottrell on the wing. That's your role. Like, I'm seeing different little things here or there where guys don't seem to be getting thrown around too much. Like, I think you still need it to a degree where you need guys to be flexible, play different roles. But I'm more confident than ever that this coaching group can understand you need to be playing this role to make this system work. And like, I can't find the quote off the top of my head, but I even heard, Voss talk about trying to get players to like get their best attributes and play that and work with that instead of, like a Cripper going, oh, you're not the fastest player, so let's work on your engine. It's like, no, you're a big brute. You win the football. Let's play to your strengths. And that's something we've been calling out for a while, and seeing that Vossi's actually talking about that and trying to instill that and making a game plan that, okay, we've got a deficiency here, but we've got the strengths in this column. Now, do we have anyone that covers up those deficiencies? Can we make the system cover those deficiencies instead of being like, oh, we need you to play this role that you're probably not capable of?
Yeah.
And I think that over the next few seasons, hopefully with this coaching group staying together, the deficiencies that are there will bring in players to cover them, and we'll find out what they are, and we'll be able to not just cover over the cracks, but fill it in with concrete. And there is no cracks in the foundations of this football club. Like, I'm pretty excited about hopefully what we can build over the coming seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like often when we talk at this stage, there's so many, not that there isn't any, but so many question marks. And we're looking at every line and we're like, what's this guy going to be this year? It feels like at this stage, when you look at, like the best 22 that I've predicted or would like to see, more than in recent memory, it's like, okay, these guys are certified. We know what we're going to get. Very unlikely they're going to regress with their age and just where they're at. So those question marks are getting smaller and smaller. And like just these guys, like, I don't want to use Dow again or like Fisher. It's like, we don't need you to be a 3-goal a game small forward now. Like that's not what this is. We know that Mackay, like I think he can kick 60 this year if he's healthy. We know that Curno's going to come back. Like we got those questions answered. So it's just around the edges.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And like, I remember talking about so much at the end of last season in like our season review of just all the stats that we ranked horrendously in. It was like, oh, we're one of the worst, efficiency sides. We didn't handball the ball, all these little things. I'm just so excited over this preseason and first half of the year to see what we're actually going to be about.
Oh, I know.
I have no idea what Vossi's going to implement, what kind of team we're going to be. He says he wants us to be a hungry, contested side, which I love. I think that's where it starts in the AFL these days, win the footy. So I can't wait for it. I guess there is a couple of negatives. Obviously, the Sam Walsh injury, which I think is something we need to touch on.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's incredibly sad to hear. You never want one of your best players getting injured and, like, at least missing the first month of the AFL season, if not more. I guess, how did you feel about it? And who do you think has to step up and take his spot in the absence of Sam Walsh?
Yeah, it's sad that at the end of last season, we were just talking about, wow, he's done it again. Another full season. How has this man not missed a game with how hard he goes at the ball, how much workload is on him? And obviously this setback now. I think for me, obviously extremely disappointed for him as a club and my outlook as a whole. It actually hasn't really changed my season outlook as much as it has for other people that are a bit more doom and gloom about it. I still think that we can get the wins over that first month or so that he misses where we should. But stepping up is a really good question. I mean, like you mentioned about all these things that you're excited to see, the structure and the players. Oh, whatever this midfield setup that we're going to be running out there, I'm just so excited to see it. And I just have to ask you, like, seeing lots of intra-club stuff and all of that, Hewitt and Ches, who are you more at this stage excited for, or maybe high on heading into the season? Very different players, but just what's your take on that?
I mean, I've been such a big Chera fan pretty much since he got drafted. I've always kept a close eye on Freo and loved what he has done. So immediately when we signed him, it's God, I just want to see Chera play for us because he's that exciting, more flair style player. And if anyone's gonna like fit the mold of more of what Sam Walsh does, he's probably the closest replacement. But again, it's that system over personnel. No one is at a Sam Walsh level in this team. No one does exactly what he does. So it's almost, and I hate to use the term, but it's like the money ball system of, okay, we've lost this one guy. Can we get a system or multiple players to make up for what we've lost? And that's the idea of Moneyball that a lot in the media don't tend to understand what that even means. But so it's like looking for the players to step up. And obviously Chera's probably the closest to that, who makes me excited. But seeing little things from George Hewitt in those highlights, he's not a player I've ever watched super, super closely, but just he's contested winning. He's just a big brute. He'll run through players. I think what he's going to bring to this team is something that it's going to be so underappreciated for outside of Carlton, but I think he's going to become like one of those players that every single Carlton supporter is going to be like at the end of the season, like he is so important to us. Like if we lose a George Hewitt in injury, like we're going to lose the game rather than losing maybe like a Chera in injury just because of all those gritty things that he's going to bring to the team that no one else does. Like, so I don't know. Maybe I haven't answered your question at all. I've sat on the fence, but I think originally it was Chera, but now I just can't wait to see George Hewitt because I've never ever really looked at him that closely, and I just can't wait to see what he brings to this team because no one else is close to him.
No, that's the perfect answer. You should be equally excited about both. The thing, it's just, I'm just going to reiterate it because what you said about Hewitt, like just watching what he's been doing at training and in the intra clubs and stuff, it's like, he's going to win the ball. You can picture him like he's just going to be a handball machine, feeding it out to Williams, to Sard. Like it's just, you can just see how perfectly it can work if the system and the structure is there. So the midfield is, I'm just so excited to see what we roll out.
And I'm trying to find the question here because someone mentioned about like looking at who actually could replace him. There was a couple. So there's a good question here actually from Whoopi37. He was talking about like, who are our wingers going to be? Because initially he had Chera probably playing a bit more there, but now that Walsh is not going to be there for the first month, sort of he's expecting him to take over a bit more of that Walsh role, which I would tend to agree that's immediately where my mind went to sort of those four key midfielders probably going to be your Cripps, Hewitt, Chera, Kennedy now. I guess who do you have playing on the wings? And also I kind of want to know who is your like midfield six of the core guys that you think will go through at least the center bounces as well, if I can.
The wing's such an annoying position, isn't it? For us and where we've been, there's so many players that I would like to say, because I don't see you as one of our key centre bounce guys, therefore the wing is for you. But it's just not that easy. I really think that O'Brien is a best 22 player currently. Yeah. And I have him on a wing. And your smile suggests that you do too.
Yeah, he seems to make the most sense. Everything we saw in the back half of last year, when I mentioned early in this podcast talking about guys, finally getting a proper role and working in the system, he's like the first one that comes to mind of he's the perfect winger. We had him more like a Cottrell. O'Brien is such a better player. No offense to big Cotters, but I think what O'Brien can bring to this team is perfect. Those little defensive deficiencies. You can cover that. You can get a system that exploits the strengths. No one in this team enters the ball inside 50 like him. Like I go back to the St. Kilda game last year and some of the shoes he was getting out to Harry, which is amazing. Imagine with the Charlie Curnow down there with this small forward brigade moving a little bit more in there. It's exciting. I think he pretty much nails down one of them. Honestly, one of the others, like I don't know when he's going to be back. Doherty is probably the other whenever he is good to go, and hopefully that is soon. But obviously, there's other things that are a bit more important than footy as far as Doc goes. As far as the other winger, like you look at the players that could run through there, and I honestly feel like it might be a bit more of a rotation rather than a single player just being there. Because I'm looking at like, does a Martin spend time there? does JSOS even do it? You look at then your Fishers. It looks like from some footage that Setterfield's even been running out there, which we saw last year and didn't work well.
No.
But this is the crazy thing about a new coach. As much as I hated Setterfield and it was like Setterfield's not a winger, he's an inside mid. I see Vossi put him out there, and all of a sudden I'm like, Setterfield is going to be the best winger in the AFL. Like, that's immediately what you think. So,
yeah.
I mean, we've even got Jack Nunes, that is someone that doesn't get spoken about, but he's that, 6 out of 10, you're going to get the same consistency every week on the wing. I'm not upset if Jack Nunes starts the season playing that wing role. Like, yeah, but it is going to be the hardest one. We don't have those nailed on players. But if anything's happened at Port, we've seen that, a guy like an Amon has come out of nowhere to be one of the premier wingers. I'm hoping that Vossi can unearth a gem out of nowhere. And maybe that is a Setterfield type. Who knows?
And we look at the bulk of half-backs that we seem to have now. It's like, okay, well, is Williams fit enough to do that role? Like, could Newman start to push up? Like, it's a ridiculous situation. Where does Dow fit into everything now?
Yeah.
Like, is he going to get as much centre bounce opportunity as he did? It's way too hard for me to know the direction it's going to go. I think you're right, though. It has to be more of a by committee job than having it as two set players. Because Chera, it feels like, I don't know. I just see him being on the ball a lot more than on the wing, at least while Walsh isn't there.
Definitely. And he's someone that can float as well. Like, if he's not in the guts, if you've decided to run with a Hewitt, Cripps, Kennedy, or a Dow in there, you can go out on the wing for a couple of minutes. Like, you can rotate things a lot. There's a chance that even like a Stocker when he comes back, or even a Brody Kemp, we've seemed to move Kemp, apparently play a bit of a forward role because it looked like Harry didn't play that intra-club. He's someone that a lot of people have been crying out for to play a midfield role. Does he move up the ground? It's definitely the most excited I've been about a lot of our fringe players.
Yes.
Because I just, for some reason, have a lot more faith in this coaching group. I look at the resume of a lot of them. I can buy in. I buy into a lot more, I feel, of what Vossi has done rather than a Teague. Like, you were always seeing a couple of things and going, oh, it'd be good. Hopefully he's the man. And you back him to the end. But at the back of your head, there's always that, but is he the right guy? I don't seem to have those doubts at the moment for Voss. And it's obviously easy to say that without really a game of footy being played. But I'm looking at, does a Cunners come in and does he make that wing role his own? Like, there's so many plays that it could be. And that's always maybe been the negative. But I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm just so much more positive on all these little aspects at the moment because I have faith that this system is going to work.
Yeah, agree. And the negative elements that we've talked about present opportunities for players, and that's an exciting part of it too. So I'll throw, you asked me about how we're going to, work with Walsh out. This question from Billy Z, who asked, who do we think the Blues will miss most in the first month of the season, whether it's Walsh or whether it's Jones, who we haven't really talked much about this episode, those logistics. Give me your thoughts on that situation.
It's tough. Like, the midfield's been probably one of the weakest areas. Like, when Jones was there, defense was pretty good. Forward line with Harry there. We knew a Charlie, if he could come back, that forward line's okay. It was the midfield, when you compare it to the class of all those other teams in the top 8. Like, you got a Cripps who's really good. You have a Walshy who's really good. Before we had Hewitt and Chera, it's Kennedy, Dow, and Ed Curnow. Compare that to a Melbourne midfield, to a Western Bulldogs midfield. Doesn't look great. But with the inclusion of a Hewitt and Chera, I think you can cover a Walshy for a few rounds. It's not ideal, and like, I understand why people are so upset about it, but I think honestly it's down back because we just don't have that ideal Jones replacement. Whereas I see us having enough guys who can potentially cover a midfield. So, and the fact that like Jones is out, is not there. He's not a Carlton footballer anymore. Hopefully Walsh is only missing that first month. Like, the injury could have been a lot worse, and that's why I think I'm so optimistic about it. And if we want to be a good finals team, you got to find ways of winning without your star players. Obviously, the best teams, any team in the AFL, you take the best guy out of the team, they're not going to be the best. You saw how Richmond were last season. They lost a few of them. We're not going to be the exact same, but I think Jones is the bigger miss. Did you want to go into a bit more Jones chat as well after I get your answer to that same question?
Yeah, well, it leads perfectly into your man C Tubbs question because I absolutely agree. There's so much uncertainty for me with who's going to take the Jones position, and especially Chris's question, which is whether not having Jones is going to expose, is the word that he used, expose Wiedering or change how Wiedering plays and looks out there. Oh, it's such a great question because it is going to be a completely different situation for Wiedering. Jones, such a reliable mate to have down there to be able to cover, the defensive lapses that we knew were happening up the ground and been able to help out. Where I'm seeing Wiedering hopefully going to be able to take another step, get that All-Australian, Guernsey, that kind of thing. Yeah, how are you feeling about that? Do you see this is an opportunity for Wiedering to become the no doubt best key defender in the league, or does he take a step back?
It's a tough one. You look at where we set up and how we did it last season, and Jones was that guy that pushed high up the ground. He took those intercept marks, which then, if you're going to use that word expose, it didn't expose Wiedering out the back, because he didn't have to worry about it because Jones was he was sort of dealing with the danger before it got to the last line. And his ability as well, Jones's ability to win those one-on-one contests. There was that stat he hadn't lost a one-on-one in however many last season. Those are things you're definitely going to miss. But there's a part of me that also wonders that because Jones was so looking to intercept, go off his man, is there a scenario where losing a Jones helps Wiedering because he's not exposing Wiedering by doing that, because we're getting a guy maybe like a McDonald or a Lewis Young that's going to stay on his man a little bit more? Does that end up helping Wiedering not, be out in those one-on-ones where Wiedering has to do it? I don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to have to see every single week Wiedering have to win 10 one-on-ones to stop a goal from the opposition because we've just the opposition have exploited everything, and all of a sudden it's one-on-one in the goal square. And I'm hoping that it's another one of these, system over personnel, where it's another one of these areas where we're going, we need multiple players to do this role. And by the looks of things, it's a McDonald to be that lockdown. You don't worry about intercepting. You take that second tall, and then a Gov plays that floating role, or whether it's a Kemp or whoever it is. It's almost like two players to take that one role. And I think systematically that could work a little bit better for us, where maybe a Jones then isn't getting exposed, having to do two things. You can get another guy to play that role. So I'm hoping that.
I like that take. Yep.
We just saw how often we're exploited out the back from guys either not defending or the midfield putting the defenders under so much pressure. I'm hoping that we finally get this defensive structure right, and it's just going to figure itself out, whether it's Jones not being there, whether you have to throw anyone in there. I don't care who it is. It should be, next man in. Obviously, we're losing a bit of quality there in the player, but the system overrides it, and it's not that big a loss because you know where to be. You're in the right positions, and it doesn't matter whether you're the greatest, fullback in the AFL or whether you're literally first-year player.
I like it. I mean, it's an optimistic and positive take, and I'm going to subscribe to it. I just have to throw it out there. You don't have to give me an explanation. Yeah. Do you think McGovern is in the team round one?
It's a hard one. If I was doing my best 22 right now of who I would make, I don't think he's in there. But seeing how they're playing him at the moment, it seems like he will be the guy round one that plays that intercept role, which I'm happy that we're not doing our best 22s this episode. It's going to be a little bit later. Once we've seen some practice matches, we can see who's playing, because he's one I've earmarked as, if preseason he clearly plays that, third intercept defender and it looks good structurally, then I think he locks himself in there. And at the moment, I think that's where we're going. So I do see him starting round one being that role, or at least someone doing the exact role that we all imagine a Gov is doing. What about you? Do you see him being that sort of lock best 22 as the third tall?
I don't at this stage. So I went to one of the open training sessions, as many of our listeners I'm sure were there as well. It's so easy at these training sessions to look at every player and go, oh gee, it's their year. Oh, look how good they look at training. And I was messaging you and I was saying all these guys that were looking so crash hot. And he was just one of the few where I was like, I'm just not seeing it. Like he's getting great. He's going up against Charlie and Harry, and they're great forwards and all that, but he's getting beaten in the air every time. He's not quick enough on the ground. It's just like, I'm so optimistic about so many aspects of this team. I'm really cautious about how this is going to look this year. And we'll talk about it more in our next episode. But for me, I'm way more excited about what Young can do, if he is going to be there at round 1 or not. Yeah, like give Kemp the opportunity as the third. Let's see McDonald again. McDonald has been good when we've been able to see him. So yeah, I'm going to say no for round 1.
Yeah, I guess on that, because you've had the privilege of seeing a bit more than I have. Was there guys in the back line that you think maybe play that role better, or do you see us just going the Wiedering, McDonald, and going other guys around there? Because there's definitely a fan question I do want to ask after this, but I'd love to get that experience of who did you see stepping up, I suppose, in that back line? Because that's the big thing that I think we're all really looking towards, how that's going to set up.
And it's so hard to run back what I just said. It's so hard to make those calls from a training session when it is so informal and that kind of thing. I think, Young, I don't know. He excites me. I feel good about what he can potentially bring.
Yeah.
I just don't know whether the club sees. It's just so hard to know what the club sees. Like they could have made this decision already that McGovern is it's his spot for the taking for round 1. It's I can't even make a call. I'm so optimistic on so many. It's just Gov. I've been burnt too many times before, and he's your man. And every season, this is his year. And I want it to be so bad, but I'm just not sure.
Yeah, he's one to keep an eye on for sure. I guess I'll make you, I'll get an answer out of you with this question. So we had one from Garth McLaughlin, who we've sort of said, who could replace Jones. But he also sort of said, how are we going to structure down back? How many tools sort of versus smalls or utilities? Who's that lockdown? Who's the intercept? Who's the run and carry? If you were to give me you're the coach right now, and you can make any decision you have, who is your, I guess, defensive 7, and how are you structuring that? I'm putting you on the spot a bit. Not too sure if you have this ready.
No, I do. Absolutely, I do.
Who is the 7, I guess, that you're looking at for this one?
I love it. For me, so much of our back 6, it was the thing last year, or back 7, that we loved, and we love what they did. I think I'm running back a really similar setup. So I think for me, I'd be giving Young the crack round 1.
Ooh,
have a go there. Yeah, let's give it a go. Wiedering and Young as those two. Going key position. I think obviously Sard and Newman for me.
Yep.
Like no doubt. A lot of people don't love him. I think it's still Plowman is that guy back there. He's so crucial at this stage for what we're doing. And then Williams and Stocker as the other 2.
Yep.
So they're my 7.
Does Kemp get a look in anywhere into that back line? Are you maybe seeing him play a different role? Because he's probably the one, apart from maybe a Gov, that stands out as someone I really want in that best 22. But when I was trying to do it and get guys in positions, it's hard to know exactly where he does fit.
So true. I have got Big K on my bench currently. It is such a question mark about where he's going to go. I think I definitely can see him going back there. It was just so hard for me to exclude any of those other guys because they've been playing so well there. But yeah, but what about you? What are you leaning towards with especially the keys?
Yeah, look, I've got the 3 big talls. I've got your Wiedering, McDonald, and Gov at this stage. So trying to get that Jones in 2 players and trying to work off that. I think you got your your Sard, Newman, Williams, I think they all have to be in the team. Williams is probably the one I can see moving around a little bit, whether he ends up spending time in the midfield or even half forward resting a little bit. Because I think Newman's just been so solid there. Sard's been so solid there. You can't not start those. And they're all a bit run and carry more kind of players. So it works with that question that we got there from Garth, where that's where I definitely think you have to have a Plowman in there to be that lockdown small. And I'm hoping that the system can not expose him as much and we can get to see the best out of him. But I'm kind of maybe even hoping that by the end of the season, a Kemp takes over that role and he's end up being that small forward or even that Liam Stocker. So at the moment, I sort of almost have too many players in that defensive part because I see a Stocker and a Williams almost playing a bit forward. So, if I'll say it all again, I'll go Plowman, Wiedering, Newman, Williams, McDonald, Sard, with Gov also being there. And then to make it even more ridiculous, I do also have Stocker on the bench, being basically a mid defender if you need him to. Like, I've got so much versatility across this lineup.
Yeah. Very similar at the end of the day, to be honest. It's just like McDonald or Young, like, again, but both just real big question marks about what we're going to get from them. It's exciting. It's good stuff.
It definitely is. So, look, with that, I guess, Jones still conversation, we do have one final list spot. So I think we may as well go through the guys who are currently in contention for that. And there is something that, while we haven't been recording podcasts, we've taken, obviously, a bit of a break over the summer. I've been delving into all the Carlton content, and there has been one thing that has slightly frustrated me a little bit that I have been seeing out there, different takes, is yes, there has been a lot of players from our VFL team currently training with the AFL team to make up the numbers in a lot of drills, which I think is a very good thing. There's a few guys like a Jesse Glass McCasker, a Will Hayes, Ned Cahill. I'm seeing a lot of names getting thrown around and a lot of people saying, are these guys going to get that final list spot? And I just wanted to clear up for either people that aren't aware, but basically at the moment, we only have 3 players who can currently take that last list spot because we've actually nominated them to be official train-on players. Those being Tyrese Liu. I still don't know how to pronounce that man's last name. Big Bucket Hat, we're going to call him. We've got Joshua Cripps, and we've got Michael Lewis, who has recently been added. So as this stands, as of recording, so 3 guys that can take that position because they're the only ones we've lodged with the AFL to potentially take that. So I'm going to go through each of 3 of these guys, and then I want to get your opinion, Lockie. Are we signing him, or what are we doing? So we've got Tyrese here. We've got he's 18 years old, was from the Eastern Ranges. He was overlooked in last year's draft. He's 194 centimeters. Tends to play a bit more of that third tall intercept defender role when he does play down back, but he's quite versatile. He ended up playing most of his juniors as a midfielder, ended up growing quite a lot late. They threw him forward a little bit, but last year found his role as a defender. I guess the reasons he didn't get drafted was he tends to lack a bit of speed. He's also not that key defender just yet, as he plays a bit more of that third tall. But he apparently, he plays extremely well. He's a great marker of the footy and he reads the play. So that's Tyrese. You've been to the open training. You've seen the man out there in his bucket hat. What have you made of what you've seen of Tyrese?
Impressive young man. Big buckets. I don't know how many people we heard at the ground whispering, like, who is that guy? Who's the guy in the bucket hat? I should have mentioned him before as one of the guys who, in playing like defensive role in the drills and in the simulation, he won more one-on-ones than he lost for sure.
That's good.
And he didn't look out of place at all, which, unfortunately, I can't say the same about the next player that we'll talk about, but I'm really high on the possibility of us adding him.
I guess out of curiosity there, do you remember who he was sort of playing on, like his direct opponent in those drills where he was doing quite well? Or was he taking those pack marks and winning the contest rather than just being sort of stopping his direct opponent?
Yeah, no. You've put me on the spot there. Definitely, he was definitely doing both scenarios. I can't remember who exactly he was playing on, but I just remember thinking this guy does not look like an 18-year-old outsider. He looks like someone that has been with this crew for a while and knows kind of the role that he's supposed to be playing. Really interesting. Really interesting. I was very impressed, and he showed more than I expected.
That's good to hear. So I guess we move on to the next one. A name we'll pretty much all be very familiar with. It's Joshua Cripps. He's 19 years old, played at East Freo, overlooked in the draft. He was sort of that older player because obviously COVID and things like that. He's 199 centimeters, so he's a tall boy. He basically came back from an ACL injury last year, so had missed a big chunk of footy. He tends to play a bit more of a key forward ruck role, or that's what he did in the Waffle Colts. He definitely isn't the finished product. He has shown fast improvement, so when he did come back from that injury, those who are watching him closely were saying he was just improving really, really quickly compared to maybe some other players that you don't see that potential in them. You sort of see them as just being at the standard they're playing at. He seemed to be someone that could learn quite well. He's great overhead, but maybe like Tyrese, lacks a bit of speed. But Joshua, from what I've seen as well, I think he tends to be a bit more of an older style footballer, a bit more of that big guy you kick the footy to rather than that mobile modern day sort of forward. But is there a chance that someone like him can be reinvented playing as a defender? You've seen a bit more of him up close. What do you make of big Joshy Cripper?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt that anything is possible. And I mean, at the end of, I think when we found out about these guys training on, I kind of threw it out there that, okay, if we're looking at one last list spot, Josh Cripps, absolutely. Yep. Keep Paddy happy. Like, the more brothers, the more siblings around the club, the better. We love that. Yeah, I'm not putting a line through him or saying that he can't be anything and that I'll be disappointed if he's the one that we chose. I just didn't think he even was in the same ballpark as Tyrese in the session that I saw, where, like you said, they're very, very different style of player, and Cripps is definitely the big wow. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. He gave, I don't even know if I should say it.
Do it.
He gave me Mason Cox energy out there.
Okay, interesting.
But probably not as good is how I was feeling just at that one training. It just didn't. I could not imagine him being with the main group for the rest of the season, personally.
Yeah, from what I have seen, and he's limited, he reminds me a bit of, and this is not the greatest comparison as far as for optimistics sort of parts to it. It is, it reminds me a bit of what we saw from sort of Callum Moore, where it was just like, he's big, he doesn't move around too much. And when he does get it, it's not like amazing. Like, he's fine. So I don't mean to be too critical on him because, look, I'm keen to definitely, get down to Icon Park during next week and hopefully see a bit more of him so I can get a better opinion of him. But at the moment, I'm definitely maybe leaning towards some of the other players from what I have seen. And going on to the last guy, look, I will be dead honest with this. I haven't seen a lot of the others. I've seen zero of him. I know nothing about Michael Lewis. But I'll go through what I've tried to discover to give you a bit of an overlook. He's 19 years old, played at the Sandy Dragons. He was overlooked in the draft, 192 centimeters. So the smallest out of all of the options here. Again, it's really hard to find information or footage on this guy. Basically due to his height, I'd say he's a bit more of that third tall intercept defender. The interesting thing here is he had basically signed to our VFL team. That was all we had planned for him. It was like, cool, you can top up into the VFL. He impressed so much in these training drills where guys are talking about a Will Hayes, a Ned Cahill, a Glass McCasker. He impressed so much that out of all of them, we decided to lock him in as a train-on player to potentially take that last list spot. So what excites me there, and if you're going to get optimistic about Michael Lewis, it's the fact that we had no plans for him, and he's impressed that much that he's now in contention with the other two. So he's one to keep an eye on and have a look at him. Where do you see? Obviously, you wouldn't have seen much of him, but going off that bit of information and the fact that out of nowhere there's a bit of something in him. What do you make about him maybe taking that last spot?
Well, as I kind of prefaced this little discussion with, all three of these guys, I think there's positives for each of them, and I'm not going to be upset if we go with either of the three, or if we decide not to use that spot at this stage. So, yeah, look, are any of these three guys, if they're picked up, going to play early in the year? Feels pretty unlikely to me.
Yeah.
But I could see reasoning why any of them would be selected.
Yeah. Easy. So, look, I'll go on to a fan question we have here about this from Matt Gandolfo. He says, will the Blues use their last list spot on any of these, or will we save it for the mid-season draft? So that's the first question I'll leave there. So I want your opinion on that. Out of these three, are you taking anyone, or are you saving that list spot for the mid-season?
I would put some cold, hard cash on the fact that Tyrese will be picked up now and that we will not be having that spot for mid-season, personally.
Yeah, look, from, again, limited I've seen, Tyrese is taking the cake, and it's an interesting concept to leave a list spot open. I always feel like there's going to be an injury, and if we need to top up, there's going to be someone you can move to the long-term injury list. I think out of all the players that are available now, if this is what we've got, I reckon you go for it. Tyrese before someone else nabs him, because I don't see the point in not taking him now and then waiting for mid-season and getting him. Like, I understand that there's maybe going to be some other players out there that maybe didn't get selected and out of nowhere they've developed, and maybe they're the ones you should take. But I'd rather not, risk an injury to someone and all of a sudden before the mid-season, draft, we've got no one to take that role. I'd rather, nail it down now, bring in a Tyrese. So that's honestly what I'd do. And then his second part of the question, which I quite like, is if we don't say take a Josh Cripps, which neither of us have, would you sign him to the VFL team?
I mean, you would know this kind of thing better than me. Is it as easy as that?
I would assume so. I think he can pretty much sign to any team. The hard part is, does he want to stay in Victoria? He's obviously a WA boy. He's come over for this chance.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that could be one of his best chances of getting on an AFL list coming down to Melbourne, where more teams maybe get a closer look at him. And judging by last season, it seemed like we just lacked tools. We didn't have many in our AFL team. We lacked him in the VFL a lot. It was like Ben Crocker was like the full forward for most of the season. I know we've brought in a few players, but look, if Joshy wants to stay, I have no issue with, bulking talent. Get so much of it into the VFL team. You can never have too much, because with COVID and things like that, you need bodies down there. And if that's the best development for the guys we have listed, playing with a better team in the VFL, I'm all for it. I think that's one of the better things to do.
And while I was critical of how he looked at this training session, of course, the man is 19 with Cripps blood. Like, there is every chance that this guy's going to keep improving for the next 6 years, and then we'll have to delete this soundbite from the internet. We did want a Brownlow or something for us.
Yeah, look, I'm more than happy for us to be keeping tabs on him rather than anyone else, and us going, hey, if there's a list spot available mid-season, it's yours, mate. So, I'm pretty happy with that. So, look, there's still a little bit to touch on. I know this episode has gone quite long already, but it's our first one back, so why not be in it for the long run? What do you want to see from preseason? A very broad question here. Is there any positional changes? I want to, are there any players that you want to see change in style? What is it from preseason? Is it wins? Do you want us to absolutely destroy, St Kilda and Melbourne? What do you want to see?
I wish I could say it wasn't about the wins, but it really just changes the whole feel, doesn't it? If we knock over Melbourne, you'd be feeling pretty good. Oh man, there's just so many things that I'm ready to see. I feel like I'm going to rewatch both these games, watch them a couple of times, pick it all apart. I think probably the biggest thing will be seeing who does run through the midfield and who gets to go on those wings, and then seeing who early is putting their hand up to try and lock down those spots. I mean, you spoke so much about how different this coaching coaching staff is, and I'm no doubt they're going to try some different things, and that's exciting. I like seeing what they're going to experiment with and see what could work during the season. What about you?
Yeah, like, I'm not too focused on wins per se. I
Yeah.
try to equate
We shouldn't be.
preseason to what it really is for like English soccer. I always go to that because that's another sport I'm super into. And I feel like over here we've had those like the Wizard Cup, the NAB Cup, and it was
Oh.
like another thing to win for like maybe like the lower teams, which I always find super interesting. But I don't think it needs to be that. It's about little things we see. And even last year, I remember that St. Kilda game, the way we were leaking goals, sort of streaming forward, it wasn't a good thing. So I think we need to really nail on. I don't want to see 5 goals being conceded. I want to see a game plan that you can maybe start to understand. I want to see a few players and who's taking those positions as you mentioned, who's playing those defensive roles, who's getting a run on the wing. And I think as far as, players to look out for, I really want to see what Zach Williams is doing. I want to see where he's playing. Same with the Zach Fisher, guys that we're not 100% sure their role. Then probably the big one I really want to just get a glimpse of is a Jack Carroll. There's been a lot of hype about this guy. I don't think anyone's expecting him to play round 1, but it's the second half of the season that we're excited for. With him potentially jumping in, he's someone that I'm quite excited to potentially see where he maybe fits in with the club. Is there any players that you're really excited to have a look at?
I love that. Oh, there's so many. I think Motlop is super exciting. He's going to feature in our predictions episode, I think, because I'm pretty damn excited for him. Yeah. Oh God, there's so many. I think it's so hard not to be excited for Kemp and to see where he's going to be. So yeah. Oh gee, I can't wait to be able to dissect these once they're out there.
I can't wait. Cannot wait. So I think we'll end with one last sort of category here, which is the leadership group. Eddie, something that finally got announced the other week, where we've got our captain. It is a standalone Cripper with Wiedering and Walsh as the vice captains. I definitely have a bunch of questions on this. I'll start with the first one. Are you happy that we've reverted back to just the simple one captain rather than the co-captains?
Absolutely. I love a solo captain myself. And I feel like if we went with one vice captain, it would have been a bit snubby. So I'm happy. This was the perfect outcome for me.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. I don't have any issues. I'm happy Cripper's taken the captaincy and we haven't moved it on to someone else. I know some are looking at a Wiedering or a Walsh, and I know myself, I was maybe seeing Wiedering be that guy, but I'm just happy that we've just gone, Cripper, you've been here. You're, the more experienced head. I don't see the point in taking away all the hard work for Cripper and then going with another unproven guy and putting all the weight on his shoulders when we don't know what that means. So I think, Cripper, take it. And we've got, the next seemingly captains of the footy club to come take those vice captains. I like it. Now, the other question is, previously we've had quite a large leadership group. It's something that some clubs have. They'll have a defender in there, a forward. We'll have like 7 different co-captains. Now, where do you sit on the massive leadership group versus the smaller? Because there's been a lot of people out there who have hated having 20 people in the leadership group. They like it nice and concise. Do you have much of an opinion on that at all?
I wouldn't say I have an extremely strong view about it, but if I had to err one way or the other, it would be the smaller group like this for me. I think not that we've played footy at the highest level, but that there's leadership in people that don't have titles and that anybody can show their leadership qualities regardless of, whether they're taking the toss when the captain has the week off. So I like it this way. I think it's really clear that these 3 guys are, or at least to me, that they are the ones right now that are the biggest leaders and advocates for the group. I mean, and like some of the situations that are rolling around now, like the GWS with the bunch of captains that they've just announced, like, I just don't think it's that great a look and just isn't as productive for me. But what about you? Do you have a stronger opinion?
Maybe slightly. I think, and maybe this is just me getting annoyed at everyone out there. But I just feel like there was just way too much. And this may be coming rich from me, again, caring about people caring about this. But I was just like, I don't care who's in the leadership group. Like, I don't care if it's 20 blokes, if it's 5, if it's 3. I feel like we're putting way too much energy into something that maybe isn't that important. Like, some clubs have quite a few in there. Some clubs have 2, some have 3. I just don't think we need to spend the energy going, that's the problem. The problem was there were too many guys. We need to simplify it. I don't think there's a proper solution to it. And like you, I think it doesn't need a title. You can be a leader. Like, none of these guys, interestingly, like, come from the forward line. So does that mean we don't have a leader in the forward line? Like, all of these things, I think leaders will step up and take the mantle when they need to, and they can run different sections of the club and their different groups. I think it's good. I think those guys deserve the recognition, but I really don't think it matters personally whether you throw a Harry in there, whether Ed Kerno was in there for his older statesman. I think it's a novelty title that, honestly, apart from the captain itself, I think vice captains mean nothing. So I don't care who's in it. But on that,
I like it.
Was there someone that you maybe wish was in the leadership group that wasn't? Does it mean
that
absolutely.
Much to you? Here's my list of 7 players that I wish were in the leadership group. No, not at all. Well, so then this is a bit, a bit off that topic. But do you think, like, so people will talk about, like, all right, let's take the captain off Cripps, and that means he's going to play better. Do you subscribe to that kind of the pressure of being a captain theory?
I think it does affect players differently. Just the amount of things you have to do. It's not necessarily, I think, the pressure of, oh, you're the captain now, so all the players look to you. I think it's more what happens outside. It's you're now doing all the meetings, you're doing all the media, you're doing everything. Where if you're not captain, you're not having to attend all those things outside. And it's almost as if you could have just concentrated a bit more on your footy and the footy club internally, whereas now you're having to almost 24/7 think about footy. And I do subscribe to the fact that there are some players out there that will struggle with that, and there's some that relish in it.
Yeah.
And just from what I see on the outside, I think originally Cripper maybe might have struggled with the media side of things. I don't think he was that natural talker that just relished doing all the interviews, whereas I definitely saw Doc as being that guy. So I think initially maybe that helped him. But now I honestly think Cripper does really well whenever he is presented to the media. I think he speaks incredibly well. He sounds like a leader of a footy club. And he does seem to me like that player that does relish in it. He wants to be the king of Carlton. He wants to bring success to this footy club. He's signed the long contract. He's taken a bit of a pay cut compared to what he could have got at other football clubs if he went on that open market. He's here for success. And I love that he's that guy that he's been here when we were garbage. He's been the captain while we were garbage. And he's the man to take us forward. I love those little storylines. So for me, I see him as being someone that just goes, yeah, boys, get on the shoulders. Let's go. We've got it.
Yeah, spot on, mate. You've nailed it. There's no one size fits all for any of these things. So yeah, I love it.
Beautiful. So look, I think that is pretty much going to wrap up our first episode back for the 2022 season. As we've mentioned throughout this episode, there's a lot that we have planned. We've got, predictions for the season. We've got best 22s. We will be reviewing all the preseason games that happen as well, along with a bit of a build up for round 1, along with the best 22s in our sort of preview episode for the first game of the season. We'll be doing our realistic who is actually going to play round 1, because we know that there's some injuries and little things like that. We honestly can't wait to get stuck into all the content. And obviously, along with that, you guys are along for the ride. We want your input. Is there any content you want to see before the season? We'll be getting you questions for every single thing. Again, hit us up on socials at Navy Blue Corner, or email us at thenavybluecorner@gmail.com. Or if you're watching the YouTube video of this, head over, drop a comment, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. Follow us on Spotify. I'm doing all the plugs right at the end that everyone seems to do. And I believe, Lockie, just to finish this, that
Go on.
Spotify themselves have started a bit of a review system at the podcast that I know Apple have
You
done.
betcha.
And we do have a couple of them, but I have heard on the grapevine that Spotify has. So look, if you like the content that we do produce, it does help us out, algorithms and all that garbage. If you like, if you follow, if you drop a review, make sure it's nice. And maybe if we like a couple of reviews, we'll read them out on the podcast. But
Absolutely.
I have babbled on way too much at the end here and made this episode go way too long. But yeah, we are keen for 2022. See you guys next time.